scary things can happen at any time, but the one place you don't want something scary to happen is 30,000 feet in the sky. Well, that's exactly what happened in these terrifying videos caught on airplanes. From people live streaming an emergency crash to a pilot meltdown. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to look at scary videos caught on airplanes. But before we take off, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too? Hurricane plane. In 2017, much of Central America was devastated by Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma was an incredibly powerful Cape Verde hurricane. It caused 82 people to lose their lives and $77.6 billion of damage. So that's why you may be stunned to hear some people actually flew through it. The National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration flew an aircraft through Hurricane Irma, and through the window of their plane they even took this scary video. Irma was the Atlantic Ocean's most powerful hurricane ever recorded. But that didn't stop these brave and maybe crazy researchers. They flew into it to gain vital information. They used drop sensors to measure the storm's path, and this allowed them to see where the storm would be heading next. Their actions in this plane actually saved lives. From the airplane window video, you can see the plane rocking about in the hurricane. Eventually they got out of the hurricane and you could see blue skies again. They used a weather reconnaissance aircraft to fly through this hurricane. These are very tough planes to withstand hurricanes, but still, many are lost in hurricanes when researching. Hacked plane. There's nothing worse than getting hacked, whether it's your bank account or one of your social media accounts. But I think the most scary thing that could ever be hacked is an airplane. Well, that was the experience one person had while flying at 30,000 feet in the sky. Someone was on a domestic red-eye flight in the United States. All of the TV screens in the airplane suddenly glitched out. Some say this plane may have been haunted by ghosts. Or maybe a UFO from outside the plane took it over. All of the lights in the plane also turned off and then flickered on and off over and over again. I'm not sure what's scarier, a UFO or a hacker. A lot of the passengers thought the plane may be going down, but the aircrew simply said the plane had an electronic malfunction. That is probably the single scariest thing a flight attendant could say to you. Sideways landing. This hair-raising video was caught in Hamburg, Germany in 2008. The landing was incredibly scary and almost went very wrong. After the video was captured, the German government's Aviation Commission looked into this video. They opened a big investigation and found out what happened. It looks like the plane, which was an Airbus 320, tried to land in a storm. And because of these strong gusts of wind, it had to land sideways, with its wing almost crashing into the ground. This would have put the lives of the 132 passengers into jeopardy. The pilot actually had to abort this landing and ascend the plane again. That's because the wing was scraping into the ground so much it could have broken off and blown up the plane. But after a big investigation, they found out the wind was not the cause of this near miss. Instead, the Airbus documentation did not say how the pilots should respond. This meant the pilots did not know what to do in the conditions. The Airbus's internal computer also switched to ground mode before it landed. This meant the pilots had little power and could not take over the plane again. That's why the pilots had to ascend the plane again to get out of ground mode. If they didn't do that and they weren't as experienced, the plane could have crashed and taken out everyone on board. Live streamed goodbye. In 2018, an engine blew up on a Southwest Airlines flight. This hurled shrapnel all over the aircraft, and it also broke an aeroplane window, causing someone to be sucked out of the plane. The woman was sucked out of an aeroplane window at 32,000 feet. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, the passengers had to brace for impact. Many were crying, but one person named Marty Martinez pulled out his phone. He then began live streaming what he thought was his final moments. To make sure no one else was sucked out of the window, one person stood in front of it. This hero saved many people as no one else was sucked out of the plane. While all of this was going on, Marty Martinez bought some in-flight Wi-Fi. He did this so he could live stream a goodbye to his friends and family. But thankfully, the Boeing 737 with 150 people on board was able to land successfully. They made an emergency landing in Philadelphia and no one apart from the woman passed away. But it's still a very terrifying video to watch, as Marty thought it was his last moments. Prayer plane. Ordinarily, if someone asks you to pray, that's not a bad thing. But what's very concerning is when your pilot says over the intercom, "Please pray." That's exactly what happened on AirAsia flight D7237. The plane's engine malfunctioned and the pilot, Captain Ibrahim, said to all passengers, "Please pray." It turned out one of the engine's blades actually fell out.
Attention. And also please listen to the briefing. Our survival depends on your cockpitting.
This caused the airplane to shake uncontrollably as it was flying over Australia. Many of the passengers said the pilot should not have admitted he was so scared and asked them to do that. That made all the passengers think the plane was going down and it was the end of the road for them. Can you guys imagine if your airplane was shaking and the pilot said please pray? Maybe that's just me, but I would be scared out of my mind. Terrifying turbulence. Nobody likes it, but on airplanes, turbulence is pretty common. But it's usually nothing like the turbulence in this video. This one happened on American Airlines Flight 280. It was a long-board flight going from South Korea to Dallas, Texas. But in the middle of the flight, the 250-passenger plane was rocked by sudden turbulence. The entire plane was shaking and everyone on board was screaming. The flight had to make an emergency landing in Tokyo, Japan. The plane was moving around so much, 15 people were injured. This insane turbulence went on for nearly 1 hour. In the video, you can hear things like the food cart and suitcases rolling around the plane. A flight like that is enough to put you off flying for life. Hudson River crash. It's no secret that one of birds' biggest predators are planes. Sadly, every day many birds get caught up in airplane engines. That won't disturb the plane if it's just one bird, but if it's a lot, then obviously it will. And that's exactly what happened to US Airways Flight 1549. In 2009, as it was taking off from LaGuardia Airport in New York, it struck a flock of Canada geese. So many geese got caught up in the engine, it caused it to lose all of its power. The pilots had flown way too far away from any New York airport, and the plane was going down rapidly with 155 people on board. So that's why they made the decision to land on the Hudson River in New York City. This was something that had never been done before and was very risky too. The passengers then had to stand on a wing and were rescued by rescue boats. There were 100 injuries, but thankfully no one passed away in this crash. If it wasn't for the expertise of the pilot, Chesley B. Sullenberger, the entire plane could have been taken out by these geese. Captain Sullenberger was a former fighter pilot, and at the time he'd logged nearly 20,000 hours of flight. I guess it really does pay to have an experienced. Flight attendants are known to be very polite and professional, but as we'll see in this video, that's not always the case. The flight attendant in this video is said to be suffering a mental breakdown. This happened after various annoying things happened on the plane. People kept asking for things and complaining about delays on the flight. The woman took to the intercom and began screaming.
Somebody call 911. Security system. I'm about to kill passengers before takeoff. Stop. I have been finally trained by the FAA.
She also said she would take passengers' lives before takeoff. Thankfully, American Airlines Flight 2332 had not taken off yet, and this allowed police to come on board and take the flight attendant off the plane. Emergency landing. This one comes from the YouTuber One City at a Time. He was on a flight when all of a sudden a fan malfunctioned. This could have caused the plane to go down, so the captain had to make an emergency landing. Ethan Williams, who runs One City at a Time, actually caught the whole thing on camera. He had to put an oxygen mask on as well as a life jacket. The Boeing 777 landed on Shemya Island. Thankfully, the plane was able to be fixed and was up in the air again in a few hours. But it's still pretty scary that this emergency landing was caught on camera. It's something that gladly most passengers will never see. But Ethan was able to show us exactly what happens in one of these scary situations. Pilot meltdown. We've already seen a flight attendant have a complete meltdown. That's bad enough, but what if it's the guy flying the plane which has the meltdown? That's exactly what happened in 2012 on a JetBlue plane. All of a sudden, in the middle of the flight, the pilot began to rant and rave.
No, we got Israel, we got Iraq! We got Israel, we got Iraq! We're gonna get doomed!
He said, "We got Iraq and we're gonna get doomed." He also told passengers, "Say your prayers, say your prayers." He also said the plane was going down because of sins. In the cockpit, he also said, "Guys, push it to full throttle." The pilot, Clayton Osborne, appeared to have gone crazy. He was soon locked out of the cockpit by his co-pilot. And inside the cabin, he started acting crazy before he was subdued by passengers. He was later arrested and taken to prison, but he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. The cause of Osborne's mental breakdown is still unknown, but I wish him the best and I hope he gets better. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Vote in the poll in the top right corner, which was the scariest video